12:30 p.m. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Continue on to the roll call. President Fish, here. Vice President Pellegrino, here. Treasurer Wu. Secretary Wadsworth. Chief Justice is excused. College Counsel. Director of PR, excused. Senator DeHaan, Senator Rogers, Senator Self, Pro Tem Fees, Senator Dargenio, Senator Rosamilia. Our advisor is excused. Or fill in. Yes. Gotcha. CFB, Wildcat Media, The Factory Times, Web, Wildcat Esports, and our SAC rep and Res Life rep excused. Going on to the approval minutes of October 13, 2022. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, we'll be going on to voting. All those in favor? All those who oppose? And all those who abstain? With that, that passes 6-0-0. We have no announcements, no guest speakers. On to exec reports. Our president.
Good afternoon, everybody. So Bailey and I had the chance to go to Albany to join in person for the executive committee meeting for SUNY SA. We did pass a resolution. Nothing big, nothing that affects the students right now. It was a small stipend increase for most of the members in SUNY SA. And then we also had some time to talk about some concerns and meet with the president and the secretary over a meal. Last Tuesday, I met with the president, with Dan, and our college council representative, Nick Rossi. We talked about a couple of concerns with the facilities management. Hopefully those will be fixed and mediated as soon as possible. We've also talked about a lot of different plans that SGU has. So the reserves pool, the president now knows about that, including Mary Beth. And then the farm project as well, and a few other projects as well. So I yield.
Report. Hi y'all. I don't have much to report on, but as you've probably seen from the last Pro Tem meeting, committees have changed due to the current senator roster count. So
Hello. Not much is going on my side, but please do note that the last day for reserve poll submission is next week. Please submit it by 3 p.m. and I will not be accepting any late proposals. Since we're doing this poll semester, it is likely that we won't be doing a poll next semester. I yield.
I have no report today other than if you are looking to book the conference room or lounge, now it's just a reminder, you can reach out to me anytime. You can email me or call me to book the conference room or lounge for either a repeated week or just a one-time thing. Awesome. No report. Thank you.
report.
Oh, I'm going. Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing very well today. Student Wellness and DEI Committee will have its first ever meeting on Monday, October 31st from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the SGU conference room. We will be discussing plans for future DEI and wellness-related events and initiatives for this semester and next semester. If you, a friend, or a fellow student is interested in being in this committee, have any questions or concerns or ideas they'd like to present, please feel free to come around to this meeting. Again, that is next Monday from 10 to 11 a.m. in the SGU conference room. If you would like to contact me, you can email me at sgustudentwellness@sunypoly.edu or at fuesse@sunypoly.edu. As always, stay funky and fresh.
This far into the semester now, Academic and Affairs and Technology has started their meetings this past Monday, and it is official. We will be meeting on Mondays in the SGU conference room upstairs at 6 to 7 p.m. The committee we're starting with goals so far, and so far the general gist of our goals is going to be looking at old and outdated technology around campus and possibly get into our expansion of our career fair a bit more. If you ever want to attend these meetings and voice your concerns, or if you're unable, please feel free to email me or stop in during that time to come to our meeting. We're always open to hear what you have to say, and we'll be having some more information coming out too as well. If you ever need an email, send it to sguacademicaffairs@sunypoly.edu. Have a great rest of your week. I yield.
All right. Do we have any other reports? Our treasurer.
Good afternoon. Short report today. Budget is meeting at 3 p.m. in the SGU lounge today. The first meeting went well, and that was about it. I yield.
And Senator Rosamilia.
I do not have any reports on my committees, but I will say once I have a meeting time for food committee, feel free to join.
Do we have any other committee reports? Seeing as with that, going on to org reports. Webb.
Hello everyone, just like to give a quick reminder of our 2 upcoming events this week. Please join us at 8 p.m. at Donovan for our haunted house. This is co-sponsored with Res Life and some other clubs as well, so it should be quite a fun event to come and join us for. Also on Saturday, please hop over to Donovan at 6 p.m. for Humans vs. Zombies. There will be free food and fun with Nerf toys. Thank you.
CFB.
4.
Wildcat Media.
Well, we will be helping out Web with their Haunted Maze event, and I apologize for the mic troubles.
And the Factory Towers.
No report.
And Wildcat Esports.
Good evening, everyone. As far as events going on for Wildcat Esports, we have our Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 event going on tomorrow. Along with that, our Super Smash team qualified for the CECC Regional LAN, taking place next weekend at Rutgers University, and that will be live streamed. Other than that, I yield.
And before we conclude our reports, our secretary will be giving the director PR report.
Hi everyone. The PR team met previously to discuss future projects and ideas that we will be working on this current semester, so stay tuned. If anyone has any thoughts or suggestions to improve our general perception around campus, please contact President Fish, Vice President Pellegrino, or myself, the Director of PR. Thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
That should conclude all reports. Going on to old business. Pro Tem fees.
Number 2223-09.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Self.
We, the members of the student government at Utica of SUNY Poly, as represented in the Senate, do enact as follows. The purpose of this bill is to amend the policies and procedures for Wildcat Esports. I yield.
Our president.
Just note that this is supposed to be a new business. I think it just might have gotten switched when we tabled it for 1 week. It's supposed to go back into new business because we didn't discuss it. I yield.
Pro Tem fees.
So I do understand that you are in a time crunch for this bill, but I do have some concerns regarding one specific line regarding the academic. It was like an academic thing in here. I'm trying to look for it. I'm trying to find the thing. It regarded it was like an academic probation, almost something along those lines, where it stated, thank you. It stated as an active player within Wildcat Esports, you're required to maintain a certain GPA, whatever. And then it says if you fall below a 2.7, you'll be required to partake in academic recovery program entailing a weekly tutoring or attending a professor's office hours. Your tutors or professors are required to sign a form verifying the completion of the assigned work. This specific portion of these updates do concern me because it's very difficult, I think, given your format, to prove that a student has, you know, attended the tutoring meetings. The form here just has a class, a signature, and a date. You can't prove that a student is going to tutoring meetings, one, because you probably don't have access to those records. Confidential to some degree. Teachers have a difficult time accessing those. And two, how do you know they aren't just filling this form out and lying about it? Or how do you know they're going to a tutoring class that suits the class that they're actually have trouble in? I feel that this section, it's Appendix D for the player academic recovery plan. I think this is a flawed system. I think it's a necessary system. I think it's a good system to have, but I think it needs some serious workings because we as students don't have certain, I guess, privileges that a professor or an advisor would have. I yield.
Wildcat Esports.
That it is a bit difficult because we are a student-run organization. We are working with Megan Wyatt in this case to actually administer these changes. We're trying to follow a similar format that athletics has. So in the sense of where your GPA falls, you actually have to attend those study hours and they're signed off by your coach. The same thing is going to apply, but Megan Wyatt is the advisor who has access to those records, as well as Dr. Ucell. So we are hoping to keep that in place. That way players who do fall below a certain GPA threshold, which we are keeping high, that way we can maintain a good academic standing for all of our players. There is also a recovery period, so that way if they do fall behind, they are flagged. That way their GPA can go back up and they can still remain a player without Wildcat Esports actually hurting the academic side of things, because at the end of the day, everyone that is a player should also be focusing on school, and that should be their priority. So this is why we have that sort of blanket overlap where below 2.7 it's flagged, and then working with Megan Wyatt, that's when the administration takes over and they handle that side, because you're right, we do not have access to that privileged information. I yield.
CFB.
I guess my concern is the way the bill is formatted itself. It's only got highlights, so it's hard to tell what's being changed from the previous version. So I'm not saying you're trying to be sneaky and sneak some really important rule out, but usually when we're doing policies and procedures, we have strike throughs and then highlights, strike throughs for stuff we're removing, and highlights for stuff that we're adding, so that we're able to compare to what the previous rules were. I yield.
The highlights are everything that is being added, because the academic side of thing, well, the highlights is being added because this is new. Our current law states that you need a 2.5 or above to compete.
Wildcat Meeting.
I guess my concern with requiring students to attend either office hours or weekly tutoring is not every class is tutoring. Say, for example, this semester, none of my courses have tutoring, and because adjunct professors aren't required to have office hours, a student may be in a position where there is no tutoring available and their teacher doesn't have office hours. So in that case, what would a student do?
CFB.
In regards specifically to the GPA one, I was saying to the bill as a whole, it's hard to tell if you're removing at the beginning the first highlight isn't until the second page, and so it's not clear if you remove something earlier in the bill. It's hard to tell what the changes from the original Constitution are, because we don't have strike-throughs, so we don't know if you're removing anything. I yield.
Our president.
So, do you, Wildcat Esports, did you get forward the agenda for today, by any chance?
I did not.
Bailey, could you do that real quick? So the reason I'm asking is because I think it'll clear it up. When you get that email, look at the CFB example of the policies and procedures. That's what Emma's really looking for. EJ. Yeah, but it's nothing against you, but just for clarification, that's what they're looking for.
Do we have any further discussion?
I just want to add one thing. As far as if a professor or an adjunct professor doesn't have office hours or there isn't tutoring available for those classes, study hours is in a sense where they would be monitored to do the work that is required in the class and make sure they're up to date on everything that they're doing, similar to how it's done in athletics. I yield.
Pro tem fees.
I think that's a lot to keep track of, and just to have that one bullet point in there, I don't think it covers as much as what you would like it to cover. And again, I think this is a great idea. It gives people a chance to raise their GPA without just being like, okay, you're out of this. And that might have been like a really comforting space for them. I just think this requires a little more finessing and tweaking to get it to the point where it's going to work smoothly. There's a lot of loopholes I'm seeing here where people might make an excuse to not go or lie about going or XYZ. I think it needs more time and work, and I think it could really use a good policy committee meeting with Megan included. I yield.
Our audience member. So I'm just going to comment on the addition to the, well, I guess just what is it, appendix? Oops, sorry, just the academic probation, so to speak, addition to the Constitution, policies, and procedures. To my knowledge, this is just me speaking, and if anyone has any other information they can speak. Isn't it like, are our senators held to that standard of, having, like, obviously I know that they have to have the 2.7 or higher GPA, or it might be a different number, but is there like a kind of form like this for them to, if that number is dropped, then it has to be, reprimanded until it is higher again, or tutoring sessions have to be applied to? Because there are a lot of players in Wildcat Esports. There are a lot more players than there are senators on this horseshoe, and I'm just thinking that if, even like an eighth of that many people fell under that threshold of grading, there would be a lot of paperwork and there would be a lot of things to sift through. And again, as Senator Fees, Pro Temp Fees, sorry, mentioned that it could be not easily faked, as in, it's any kind of like sneaky or malicious intent, but it's still possible for something like that to happen. So I yield. Our president.
So to go off of our audience members, SGU actually has, I don't want to say a higher standard because that sounds wrong. So the standard for senators and anybody in SGU itself is 2.5. But I think this policy actually kind of opens up the door for a policy change for SGU. This would be a constitutional change. And then to go off of what Pro Tem Fees' concerns are, so like Wildcat Esports is saying, athletics has this policy already in place. And also EOP has this in place where they have like their own tutoring and stuff like that as well. So if we test this out for the first semester or first year and it fails, we can always go back to those two offices and ask how they work. It is being implemented on campus already. And that I yield.
Our secretary.
So I just want to go off of what Wildcat Media is saying a little bit too. What are the options for students that don't have either of those for their classes? If that were to occur, where would they go? Where would you go from there? I yield to Wildcat Esports.
Yeah, so that's a great question. In a sense, from my experience, when you are falling behind in a class and those resources aren't offered, most of the time you would study with your coach, or you would show your coach your Blackboard, and you would essentially have to go through all the homeworks and make sure you're up to date with everything, or email the professor. A lot of the times the coach will communicate directly with the professors. So if there is a case where there are no office hours or there is no tutoring available, then it would have to be through the advisor position to communicate with those professors. And we're trying to set the groundwork for mimicking what athletics has for our esports players, because it should be treated as such. They are competing and they have different responsibilities outside of SGU. So I wouldn't compare it as much to them being within SGU, but more being within Wildcat Esports as a player and representing us in those tournaments. I yield.
Pro Tem Fees.
I guess my question is, in the case that the student is falling behind and they are not keeping up with their contract, would that fall on the advisor to keep up with that paperwork here, especially if you have a lot of players, or would that fall on somebody within esports? And if the student were to fall behind that 2.3, would that be on the advisor to take care of that student? Or would that be placed on somebody within your executive board on esports? I yield to esports.
That would be the advisor. We do not have access to any players' GPAs, any players' schedules, or any warnings that may come up. And all of this has been spoken to Megan Wyatt about because she also has the concern with making sure that player GPAs are kept up. I yield to. Oh.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then I yield.
Senator Rogers.
Off of something that's wrong information or outdated, but so until about 3 weeks ago, my advisor was the for academics was the advisor for Wildcat Esports, Dr. Ucell, and going off of the audience concern about the large amount of paperwork that this has a potential to arise, he's already, I guess to say, incredibly swamped. It's I've been having weekly meetings with him regarding something else, and it's been incredibly difficult to even manage to get these times together from what he's been managing. Is that a concern that you've already worked through, or is that just in the air at the moment?
Yeah, so with the GPA requirements, all player GPAs are looked at before the semester begins, and then once players roll into their seasons, their GPA must be up to a certain threshold. I'm thankful to say that all of our players have above a 3.0. So this is more just having a grounds of removal if their GPA falls, but also not removing them right away and having a recovery period that they can do. This is a semester to semester basis, and we're sort of trying to work out the kinks with Dr. Ucell and Mrs. Wyatt to make sure that it is manageable every single semester, because this won't be brought up in the middle of a semester, let's say. Once the semester starts and the seasons are good, there is no other paperwork or additional paperwork that needs to be done, because at that point, then the esports staff can handle other grounds of removal because it will not involve grades. As well as everyone else's concerns, I agree that there are certain things that need to be added. And we have been in the consideration of adding a player handbook similar to the athletics handbook that all student athletes have to follow, to work this out when things become more official with esports and how it's going to relate to the school. I yield.
Senator Self.
So, I'm just taking this away from the academics now. Excuse me. So I was taking what was sent last year for when it was updated for esports, and I compared it to this year. Under Article 2, Section 7.1, I noticed that for when it goes. The old one was, in the case of FragFest event being held in the fall semester, this particular event shall be held solely within the grounds of the campus of SUNY Polytechnic Institute without the influence, assistance, and or direct funding of any kind from organizations outside of SGU for the event. In the new one, it has taken out the last little part there, the and or part there. Is there a certain reason the SGU part was taken out? I yield to Wildcat.
To my knowledge, I'm not sure if this specifically answers your question, but it has something to do with it. We have other companies that are helping sponsor the event. MSI, Dell and owns Alienware. They're giving us hardware and different packages that we can give out to the students, and that comes at no extra cost for SGU, but as well as helps us grow as an org, as well as give back to the students, because we have multiple raffles that can be given off and a lot of expensive equipment that can be used by the people that attend FragFest. So that is why it was removed. That way we can have outside help from other companies and other sponsors.
Senator Self.
I found is under our Article 4, Section 3. The amendments to these policies and procedures shall be made by the Wildcat Esports Executive Board and must receive their 2/3 vote. I kind of see that as like just playing favor towards the execs, not trying to be rude with this, but it seems like you guys want to keep it to where you guys can only make these amendments and then pass it yourselves. It's just something I see. I was kind of concerned and questioning. I yield.
A Wildcat Esports.
Add it to this for everyone else to vote on, not like proposing it as a whole. Like the proposal itself has to be voted on by everyone within Wildcat Esports. To my knowledge, that's why that's there. I yield.
Pro tem fees.
That, and I think there's also other places in which, the execs within SGU only vote on certain things that get sent to the Senate. Either way, it's still getting sent to other people. Like the execs, get together and they talk about Senate positions when they interview, and then they send it out. So there's other things within SGU too that require that, executive only, and then they send it out. So it's not abnormal to have that in there either. I yield.
Our president.
but there should be, although that's true, in my opinion, there should be either a sub-bullet or make 4.3.0 a sub-bullet, because it doesn't say anywhere now that it has to be voted on by the Senate. It just says it has to be voted on by the executive board of Wildcat Esports. So that means, by my interpretation, and the Senate can take it however they feel, I'm interpreting it as long as the executive board of Wildcat Esports passes it, the change is passed no matter what. I yield.
Pro Tem Fees.
Clause of 4.1.0, it says these policies and procedures shall become adopted and effective with 2/3 vote or greater of approval of the student government at Utica Senate, or would that have to have a totally separate bullet underneath 4.3.0, stating pretty much the same thing? I yield to our president.
So I would say that's different. 4.1.0, in my opinion, that is only enacting the original policies and procedures. And then 4.3 discusses changes to those original policies and procedures. So again, I would recommend doing like a sub-bullet somewhere that says, after approval by the executive board, Senate approval of X number needs to be obtained. I yield.
Pro Tem Fees.
I'd like to make a motion to add a sub-bullet under 4.3.0 stating all additions to the policies and procedures after receiving the 2/3 vote from the executive board must be sent through the student government at Utica Senate and must be passed with a 2/3 vote or greater. I yield.
Do we have a second for the motion? Seconded by Senator Rosamelia. Do we have any discussion for the motion? Seeing none, we'll be going on to voting. All those in favor? All those who oppose? And all those who abstain? That passes 6-0-0. Going back on a discussion of the bill. Do we have any further discussion? Senator Rogers.
Regarding the changes made to the event coordinator, I see that there are 2 new bullets added. Are these modifications or are these additions to the contract for the event coordinator? And that if they are unable to, they must appoint another officer to do so. I yield.
Okay, so for the first one, I'm not entirely sure on the first bullet. Second bullet, I believe, is an addition. So that way, another member of Wildcat Esports can officially run an event in the case where the event coordinator is not able to show up, and we just have it in writing this time, as opposed to having an event coordinated and one of the officers running it per se. Also, just side note for this, I think the most important part of this bill as to why we need it passed before FragFest is so that way the MSI and Dell sponsorships are allowed to be used at the event, to my knowledge. I yield.
Our audience member.
So for the event coordinator, the first bullet, from the best of my knowledge, that was a change to just better clarify what the position is actually intended to do. And then the second one was to make sure that if the event coordinator couldn't be there, that there would be a replacement.
Pro Tem Fees.
I think I've touched on everything I wanted to do except for the academic player recovery plan. I'm not entirely comfortable passing it the way that it is. I would want to see it go into policy committee, and I would want to see a little more discussion on it. I don't think it's fully fleshed out, so I'm going to ask esports if, you submitted this, so you feel comfortable, doing this and taking that risk, and if you feel comfortable taking that risk, I'll trust you in this, but, would you feel that it's better, I guess, if we just kind of remove that aspect from here and then we reintroduce it to the table at a later date with more, discussion with our policy committee and with other people involved? I yield to esports about that.
As far as the GPA requirement, I actually agree that that would be a good thing. It's not something where if it's not changed today, it's not going to affect any of our teams competing because everyone is above a 3.0, which is good. So I'm okay with that. I'm also okay with opening the discussion of what we feel is a fair GPA requirement, looking at them as entities of athletics, but in a different sense. It's esports. They're synonymous with each other, but also different. So, yeah, I'm fully okay with that, and we can reintroduce that change later on within the semester with more thought and talking to the committee board. I yield.
Brought some fees.
In that case, move under Wildcat Esports player contract, the bullet that states, as an active player within Wildcat Esports, you are required to maintain a minimum GPA of 2.3 or higher. Additionally, if your GPA falls below a 2.7, you will be required to partake in an academic recovery program entailing weekly tutoring or attending a professor's office hours. Your tutors or professors will be required to sign a form verifying the completion of the assigned work and removing Appendix C as a whole from this change. I yield.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Self. Is there any discussion for the motion? Wildcat Esports.
Reinstate the old policy of a 2.5 GPA. I just want to clarify that. Players are required to have above a 2.5, but there is no recovery once they fall below a 2.5.
I'll do a quick point of clarification. That doesn't. So you just remove the GPA.
Presented a motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Rosamelia. Going on to voting. All those in favor of presenting the motion? All those who oppose? And all those who abstain. With that, that passes 5-0-1. Going back on the discussion of the bill. Webb.
I'm just curious where the original policy procedures they're changing from are to view, since they don't have what they're changing. I tried looking through their page on Engage, and I don't see anything that really looks like what it is. Yield to the president.
Yeah, so that's what CFB, now Emma, mentioned. That's what we were pointing on Wildcat Esports when we discussed, like, we don't see the previous policies and procedures. I'll yield to our.
Can I make a suggestion? So the only thing they need passed through right now, is, from my understanding, PJ, is the Frag Fest thing where it says you can get outside sponsors, correct? Okay, thank you. So, SGU should take into consideration, there's problems in the other parts of the bill. It doesn't seem like anyone has any problems with that part, right? So maybe we table this bill to policy, but submit another one that gets marked for immediate attention next week that just has the Frag Fest thing in it, so that they can get what they want, and then you can also change the rest of it to be more cohesive. I yield.
Our president.
So, the only thing I'm concerned of is our next meeting's Thursday, and then Frag Fest is that next day. I don't know how that would work with the contracts, right? Does everybody? I don't know if that makes sense. Actually, one more thing. Another recommendation to the Senate you could do is just remove all of the changes except for the change that you want to pass. You're allowed to do that. Everybody else, yeah, anybody's allowed to do that.
Is that how?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Can I do a motion to have none of the policies and procedures be changed as of right now, except for, let me find the number. If anyone wants to chime in as to which number it is, I would also appreciate it. 1701. That would be the only change taking effect. That way, FragFest next 2.7.1. That way, FragFest next weekend is allowed sponsorships from outside parties that are not SGU.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I yield.
Seconded by Senator Fees. Do we have any discussion for the motion? Our audience member.
It is in new business, correct? So you'll still need to mark it for immediate attention. Just, put that in your head. If you want it changed before next week. If not, then the way I suggested it would be a little bit simpler. I yield.
Pro Tem Fees.
FragFest is next weekend or this weekend? Next weekend? Okay, so we can pass this next weekend because we would next week, so we would vote on it Thursday, right? I yield to the president.
So yes, technically, but my concern is if you do that then you're making MSI and whatever other sponsor that they have wait until the day before the event, which isn't fair to the company. It doesn't make Wildcat Esports, I know, a great light either. So, yeah.
Pro Tem Fees.
This bill for immediate attention.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Dargenio. Going on to discussion for marking this for immediate attention. Senator Rosamilia.
Attention would be like, we like mean by immediate attention would be like right away, like into like a new business kind of thing. I yield to the president.
When a bill or resolution, when a bill is marked for immediate attention, you can pass it that day instead of having to wait 2 weeks.
Do we have any further discussion for the mark for immediate attention? Seeing none, we'll be going on to voting. All those in favor? All those who oppose? And all those who abstain? With that, that passes 6-0-0, so this will be voted on today. So, going back on the discussion of the bill. Wildcat Esports.
So 2.7.1 passed. The rest of them not passed. We'll change it up and bring it back to you with everything wired up. Thank you for your help, everyone. That is all.
We're currently still in the motion to remove it. Apologies, because we didn't vote on that. We did mark through immediate attention. So we're currently in the motion to remove everything except for 2.7.1 in the changes of the policies and procedures. So, if we have any discussion for that. All those who agree? Going on to voting? Sorry. All those who oppose? All those who abstain? That passes 6-0-0. Back on the discussion of the bill. Seeing none, we'll be going on to voting. All those in favor? All those who oppose? And all those who abstain. With that, that passes 5-0-1. That concludes business for 22-23-09, going on to 22-23-10. Senator Self.
10, Club Funding Board Policies and Procedures Amendments. I yield.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Rosamilia.
Of SUNY Poly as represented in the Senate do enact as follows. The purpose of this bill is to amend the current Club Funding Board policies and procedures.
Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, this is a new business, so we'll be going on to open forum. Oh, apologies. CFB.
I was gonna motion, is there any reason why we can't mark it for just immediate attention? I mean, if no one has anything to talk about, I mean, we can always wait, but at the same time too, I mean, is anyone gonna change anything or?
Senator Self.
Personally did not get a time to look through this fully. That's kind of why I was trying to quickly scroll through, find all the different changes, but I just, with work and everything else, I have not had time to fully look at it. So I'm sorry to say that, but that's why I yield.
Pro Tem Fees.
You need it marked for immediate attention? Is there something you need to change within the next week?
It's mostly, I don't know, unless if someone had the reason to like the reason we were given was like, oh, if you haven't looked it over, you know, that's fine. I was just gonna say, like, if there's no discussion, you know, is anything gonna change within now and a week later? That's it.
Pro Tem Fees.
Yeah.
People where there's no discussion 1 week and the next somebody finds something. So if we don't need to mark it for immediate attention, I wouldn't.
Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, that concludes new business. Going on to open forum. Is there any discussion for open forum? Our audience member.
Cool. So this week I got student complaints instead of just me complaining to prove that I am not just whiny, that other people also have problems with stuff. Yeah, other people are also whiny. The lights on campus aren't on at night, and it's very scary, and it's very concerning. I hate going out to my car in the parking lot at night because the lights aren't on. It's hard to drive on campus because the lights aren't on. It's not safe, and something needs to be done. Mohawk, like the residential hall, didn't have water for like a day. And like the students were told, but like the concern is like, what are you supposed to do when you don't have water for a day? You know, there's not like, it's like, oh yeah, we're shutting the water off. Oh yeah, and then when they turn it back on, I mean like most of the water, because it sat in the pipes for so long, was brown. It's like, what are our students supposed to do when they don't have water? That was concerning. Graduation applications are due really soon, and the only reason people know about it is because the civil engineering advisor emailed her students, and that's it. Because she's awesome, and she's also my advisor, so I got the email. But not everyone knows that. They're due, like, next week for next semester. And people don't know that. Because, it's not my job to go around and tell all my friends, be like, oh, you got to apply for graduation. You got to, like, there needs to be emails about it. Not in the mailer, not, buried with a bunch of other stuff. It needs to say, urgent, apply for graduation or you're not gonna graduate or whatever. It needs to be something bigger. Yeah, that's all I got this week. I yield.
Our president.
So the lights I actually just talked to the president about. That was one of the facilities questions that we talked about during the president. And Megan actually came up with a great idea about doing a campus walk with UP and the president at night, where we just walk around campus. Then the students have the time to point out their concerns with like the lights and stuff like that, and be able to really interact with that. On the water issue, I know that was, from my understanding, just like a freak accident. There was a pipe burst thing, so I don't think there really is a plan for that, because it was such just like of a freak accident that there's not much they could do on that part. And then for graduation, I agree. I don't see it on the community mailer. The only place I personally know of it is on the academic calendar, but I do agree it's not on the SUNY Poly mailer now. I yield.
CFB.
I'm talking as a student now, so anyway, yeah, regarding the lights, I love how this was something I like brought up like weeks ago, and then it's coming back again. And two, I really love bringing up the point that in the Factory Times there was an article written years ago saying that is SUNY Poly adopting a dark mode. And so this has been an ongoing problem for years. And also too, another thing, so I've been like mentally keeping track of like what lights are on, what lights are off. It's never consistent. There's like sometimes there'll be like a whole strip of lights that will be completely off, then other times they'll be on. I can't understand what's happening. All I know is that yes, this has been an ongoing problem. They put out what the light generator, like they had the generators with the lights. Those kind of worked, but then they had them on for some nights and they didn't have them on for other nights. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, this has been a constant issue, and I think it's been talked about multiple times. But then again, not much has happened. I'll leave that at that for now. So,
Our audience member.
Yeah, just speaking quickly on the graduation dilemma, I guess. I've talked to other students about this, and some of them were kind of like trying to brainstorm why we haven't seen any emails about it, and some people say it's mostly because there haven't been. It's not something that's applicable to everyone. It's just people that would be eligible to graduate next semester. But I guess as an idea for I guess, would it be registrar, to send out a blanket email to all students so even if you were like a freshman and you didn't know that you have to apply for graduation, because honestly, I didn't know that applications for graduation were a thing until I was at SGU last semester, and there was a big dilemma about all that, and then I figured out, this is a big deal. But it would still be good to, at least for the students that do check their emails, and maybe as freshmen, they would be able to understand, okay, applications for graduation are a thing. You have to apply, you have to pay the $10 fee. All this is necessary for you to even be able to walk. So, I mean, that's more of a suggestion maybe to put forth in the future, maybe. But I yield.
Senator Self. Our president.
Jay had it up first. For the light thing, I know I think it's the main entrance technology drive. The president did mention that they were going to put in a walkway on there, so then those lights that are out right now, they should start that project, I think, next year. I can't remember. I think he said next year, within the next, yeah. Okay, so within the next year or two, they'll be putting in the sidewalk, digging up that land out there. So they'll be replacing those lights with LEDs as well. I yield.
Our audience member.
Speaking further towards the application for graduations, did you guys know that it takes the registrar approximately 1 week to process those applications? So if you send them in now, good question. That's information that is withheld pretty much until you look at the registration form, and you get an email afterwards where they say, well, actually, you might have done this, but it might not be considered to be done. Now you.
Our president.
Yeah, that's more of just, so the deadline for application is, we actually just talked about this in another office. The deadline is just for you submitting it. Yes, it'll take maybe a week or two, but it's like your college application where you have your deadline set on November 15th, but you might not get a decision until a month from now, right? It's similar to that.
Do we have any further discussion? CFB.
Student. Anyway, so was it another thing that I feel like has been brought up before? Remember when we did the professional development day, and then I forgot who brought it up, but it was the suggestion boxes and Donovan, and then again too, someone else even brought up the exact same thing, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So I don't know. It's something that I would just either like to see them taken down just because they're out. If we want to put up something new, there's that metal box right outside of the student government office that hasn't been used for anything, that has a little slot in the top specifically for, as if it was almost a form drop-off box, which I think if you want to try and do something like that, it's right there. You just have to put a label on it and just take down the ones in Donovan. That's yeah.
Our president.
So I think a lot of these projects, they sound like really simple solutions, but a lot of them are a couple of years long. Obviously, the suggestion box is one of those ones that sounds like it's pretty easy. It is, but we have to also remember that the facilities team right now is down to just about 1.5 people right now. It's like one full-time person and a part-time person. It's very, very small. I have had talks. They just lost the executive director of facilities, or whoever oversees facilities, and then everybody in facilities management. It's extremely understaffed, so there's really only 2-3 people working. So these projects, although seem easy, there are a lot of internal things that are going on within the facilities management team that they're trying to work on, and I just ask that everybody kind of be patient. Yes, the suggestion box would be a great idea for SGU, and we are working towards that, but a lot of these projects need to kind of be placed aside because there are other older projects currently in the works. I'll just give an example. Over the summer, I asked facilities and UP to install another camera in the org suite because we did have a problem last semester. And I got an email over the summer that said they are so backlogged with projects right now that ITS, facilities, and UP are so backlogged with projects that it'll be one of the ones on the bottom of the list. I said that was fine, I understood, but I think we have to understand that there is a huge staffing problem in facilities and IT right now.
Our audience member.
Okay, so I've heard there are problems with staffing for facilities. There are problems with staffing for the ITS. There are problems with staffing for HR. There are problems with staffing for adjunct professors. Can students get an explanation as to what's going on here? I find it ridiculous that we are so understaffed with the amount of money that students are paying to attend SUNY College.
Our president.
Yeah, so that's any school right now, just about. It's just been a problem. Actually, in fact, we welcomed in, I want to say, like 10 or 15 different adjunct and faculty professors. There have been a significant amount of those people in. I'm actually being taught by a brand new professor right now, and it's kind of cool to see. We're her first class that she's ever taught. And then with the other ones, it's just the same thing, right? Different opportunities. Obviously, COVID was a big problem too. They are hiring right now for full-time positions, but it takes time to do that. SGU saw a loss. We lost our office manager, but that, it just happens. People move, people get promoted, people find better opportunities or other opportunities. But there is a search for at pretty much every position on campus.
Our audience member.
Hi. As for the suggestion box, I was wondering if there's any way we can make that digital, like a suggestion form instead, because I didn't even know that there was a suggestion box before I joined SGU, and I think that it would be like students would maybe use it more. I yield to the president.
Yeah, so I think the form is actually a really good idea that I didn't think of. I think this is going to reduce the chance, or I assume why the previous administrations stopped using it mixed with COVID was because A, of the name change, and then B, because people were putting garbage in there. So I think doing the digital form is probably a really good idea. I yield.
Our audience member.
So I get that places are understaffed. It's like that everywhere in any job you go to for the last couple of years. I think the concern is, I get some of these projects are long, and I get there's, older projects that, are up to deck. But I think, something like the lights, directly affects students every day. I walk around campus at night. I have a 6 p.m. class every day. So I leave school at, 8. And it's winter now, so it's dark when I go into class. It's darker when I leave. And it is, like Trevor said, a 50-50 whether or not the lights are on, and that's student safety. We're putting students, it's not safe to not have the lights on. I'm not saying we have to turn on every single light. I'm not saying that we have to turn on, the lights down the streets. Fine. Maybe we don't focus on those. Maybe we just focus on the pathways being lit up, because they're not. And it's scary, and it makes me not want to be on campus. I don't want to be here because there's no lights. I can't see anything. I don't know what's going on. It's not safe. Trip and fall. It's not good for the campus. And so maybe, we need to urge people to move things up, because, it's maybe a little higher importance to have lights on campus than to clean up something else. I yield.
Our president.
Yeah, so that's the lights. That's one of the projects coming up in the future. He said within a year. So again, the lights out in the main driveway are getting done with the pathway. The ones in front of Donovan and the ones behind the student center, meaning the ones in between the student center and Donovan, are newly replaced. So thankfully those have worked. I walk between there every night, and thankfully those have been on. I don't know about Adirondack and over there. But I do know around the academic buildings that those have been thankfully on. But I'll yield.
Pros and fees.
Is a long time to wait for lights. I know that is there any possible way we can get that moved up? Because I think of it not only as a physical safety concern, but also just this sounds like I'm making it a gendered issue, but it's a women's safety concern as well. If I was a woman, I would not want to walk alone in the dark, and sometimes you just can't get someone to be there with you, and I think that, I don't know, that to me just doesn't sit right. I yield to the president. If there's any other way we can do it.
Yeah, so I I don't know, but I would say personally no. So you have to think a lot of this money is probably coming from grants. Thankfully, I've taken a grant writing. I'm taking a grant writing class, but the grant writing process, especially for that amount of money, is extremely extenuous. It's probably the hardest thing the school can do, and I understand that. We pay tuition. We pay a lot in tuition, but there are other costs that go into that. So there's a lot of internal stuff that goes on with our tuition that we don't see. So that cost is already being used. With that timeline, also those big projects, right? They can't just happen sooner. They really have to be planned. We have to make sure that there's no wiring or piping under there that already exists. Are we going to damage more lights in the process if we speed things up? I understand the safety concern, but right now I think the year is probably a fair timeline for them to start that project at least.
Our secretary.
So, along with the staffing shortages that the world has been facing, you also have to remember the shortages that the world has been facing as well. My friend right now is redoing her kitchen, and she took her entire cabinets out, and she has had no cabinets for 2 years because they're still shipping. They're still nowhere. So it's going to take a long time for us to even get the materials as well, just to put the new lights in. So things like that as well is another thing to consider. I yield.
Our audience member.
So this goes back also to the HR shortage. So for the men's volleyball team specifically, our coach just left for a different position. So we do not have a coach, as well as we have 2 assistant coaches who have not been approved by HR yet. Due to this, our season is currently delayed a week, and if nothing can be done to expedite that process, we may be waiting longer, and by the time we go to the Nazareth Invitational, we won't be able to compete, or we won't have enough practice to be allowed to compete. So I was wondering if there's anything with HR specifically that we can do to expedite those assistant coaches who have also coached prior seasons. I yield.
Our president.
So I'm not sure that's a good question. I could definitely ask the HR team. But I know on their end there's a lot of paperwork. I'm going to yield to our secretary because she has a little bit more experience in that. So I'll just yield for now.
So I don't have very much experience.
My mom does.
My mom does, and I am minoring in human resources. But the onboarding process is extremely difficult. Although if they have worked here, you said they worked here in the past. So I don't. Go ahead.
Currently works in a different position at the school. So yeah, that's also one worked here prior, the other currently works here.
So the clearance process is the only thing that I could think of that could be taking that time. But other than that, there should be no reason for that. So it's definitely something for us to look into. Thank you.
Senator Sell.
Off track from what you were saying, I was going back to the lights because I remember this was brought up, if I remember, when Chase Viviani was here leading the safety and facilities, and we drove him crazy with things that occurred. I believe that was also brought up. He worked with Matt Puntman on trying to fix those. I do understand the shortages and everything, which, yes, that is common everywhere. Even construction is having a hard time getting materials for certain activities they do. I believe one of the bridges I worked on over the summer, they didn't get their beams because of the materials shortage, so the bridge has been postponed for a whole year, and it was supposed to be done, I believe, right on my birthday in October, actually. I yield.
Our audience member.
This is really tall. I was back to the lights. If there isn't like a solution to fix the light problem right now in terms of like the actual lights, would there any, like, I know this is kind of old fashioned, but would there be any way to like put together maybe like a club that like when you don't have classes you can volunteer to like stay at Donovan or Kinsella and like walk as groups, because I personally don't like walking alone at night. So I don't know if that's something that we could do.
Our president.
Yeah, so that's something we already have in place. If you call UP, they'll escort you to your vehicle or wherever you have to go next at any time.
Pro Tem Fees.
So I actually like the idea of a club. Like, I know UP can be convenient, but it might be nice to have students who would like to volunteer, because sometimes it's easier to walk with a student than a police, like somebody from like faculty and staff. Like it'd be like walking with my professor back to my dorm or something like that, and that can be a little uncomfortable for students. So I could definitely see that club being there and having students volunteer. I would be one of the students out there on like Mondays or Wednesdays. Absolutely, I yield.
Senator Rogers.
Speaking back toward, I live in Adirondack. I live actually relatively close to the central walkway, which is where the main issues in Adirondack, I believe, are, including with the absolutely obliterated walkway currently. They did end up tearing up a large amount of the path in order to get to the lights, so that I understand why that might be an issue, but they do appear to be open to hiring contractors to be doing that. When they were doing that during the day, I want to say 4 weeks ago at this point now, there were approximately 8 people at a time working out there in the middle of the day. So I'm curious if that was just a drain for the resources for a single light that they worked on, or if the rest of that would all be just delayed. I yield.
Our audience member.
One more thing. The only thing that I agree with the pro temp. Not everyone is like really comfortable just calling UP or like calling like a facility member. So having students instead, like being around like actual people who go to the school and other students, and having that support might be better than, you know, having to call the like university police.
Our president.
I think Morgan just, or Senator Rogers actually just answered a lot of everybody's questions about the lights. So it's not even a year yet, and they've already started working on some of the lights. As Senator Rogers said, they dug up the roads to fix a couple of the lights. We are seeing improvements, but again, Senator Rogers just brought up a really good point. You have to dig up the roads. You have to dig up the sidewalks to do that, and just ground in general. And then for the club part, so the biggest flaw, and I think we can talk a little bit offline on this, but the biggest flaw about that is, what is the difference between walking with yourself and a stranger, right, that you just find on the side, right? You can say they're from that club, but how do you know that they're a safe person? There's no way we can background check them, because our clubs are open to every student at SUNY Poly. So we can't deny them if they seem too creepy or they have a history of some kind of history, right? So we have to think about it that way, but we can talk offline about that.
Our secretary.
So just to jump on that a little bit, the University of Albany also has a program very similar to that. It's set up through their school, so they have looked at the liability and things like that. So that is something that maybe the Safety and Facilities Committee and Student Wellness can work together on. But I would look at their program to see what their qualifications or maybe things like that are. I yield.
Our audience member.
So, to what he was just talking about now, I have an idea where instead of just like having a club with people like walking on the people around campus, is that maybe have more things to do at night, because if more people are out, it kind of like reduces that risk almost. Because like the only thing that's really open at night for the most part is like Poly Pizza or the Student Center up to like 9 o'clock. So if you have more things going on, more people out, and make people feel more safe. On another point with the lights, I don't know what my sex came a little late, but every time I go to my dorm at Mohawk around like 10:30ish, this is one light that as I walk by it just turns off, and I don't know why it's a little weird, but it just turns off. And third thing, what's your favorite color?
Our president.
So there's a lot of obviously concerns about the lights. So what I'll do is anybody with concerns about the lights, let's meet at the Student Center today. I have some free time at 8 o'clock today, and we'll walk around campus, or if it's still kind of bright out, we'll go ahead and walk around campus, and we'll be able to like map out the lights together, and then we'll have something to bring to facilities. But I'll be in the office around 8. My class doesn't end right at 8, so if I'm not there right on time, just give me a couple of minutes. But we can walk around, we can talk, we can, we don't have to talk about the lights, we can talk about other concerns, but we can take a walk around campus as a group. I yield.
Web.
I'm speaking as a student. I just have a separate thing. This is not about the lights. I have noticed, at least at 2 different res halls, in their vending machines, which I'm assuming we have some sort of provider come in for this, but there have been expired products in there that have been bad for like over months. And this is kind of concerning that we still have them for sale, that students could be purchasing these without knowing. A lot of them you can't even see the date on them until you actually purchase them. I yield.
So I wasn't aware of that, so thank you for bringing that up. I think, and you said the res halls. Has anybody else? So I can set up a meeting with Residential Life, and then I would assume probably Aux Services about that, but thank you for that. We'll definitely, and I'll keep you in the loop as well. I yield.
Audience member.
2 weeks ago, Emma mentioned about something we should do for the students. I'm sorry, I'm stepping away from lights and academics and safety. So I work with Fitness Center because I think most of us have been there at least once a week or at least 5 times a week or something like that. And I just worked with them to gather some not so expensive stuff that is actually required at the gym or fitness center. Could be bands or like balls, not very expensive stuff, not like the whole machine, which could cost like 10 grand. Something very inexpensive. So if we can work towards that, it should be fine by like next semester. But if it could be here, it could be a really good thing.
Our president.
So is that sheet in your hand possibly a list of? Yeah, if you want to just bring it up to me right
sure.
now, we'll add that into our reserves pool for SGU that I have on the table actually after this meeting. So we'll take that into consideration. I appreciate it. I yield.
Audience member.
And just a quick point of order. I assume I'm going to be probably answering a lot of the student concerns. So just to save Dan some stress, if you want to just yield to me, if you think I'm going to answer it, that'd be great. Just to help Dan out a little bit. I yield.
Our audience member.
This doesn't need to have a response back. This is just more onto the vending machines. I've noticed, and several students have told me now about this, in Donovan Hall, some of the vending machines, if you go to it, you can swipe your card, put in the number, it'll charge you, but nothing will get dispensed. And then another one will say it's sold out, completely sold out, and it's just like, but there's items there. So they're trying to figure out what's going on, and I was like, I need to remember this, forgot it last meeting, someone brought the vending machines up today, I'm like, oh, that's right. So it's been happening. I had a classmate, he swiped his card 3 times and got charged for each time. I yield.
Our president.
So again, thank you for that. I wasn't aware of that either. But just another point, this is a lot of, so the vending machines is specifically like committee work. Not that I won't bring that up as a concern, and I appreciate the concerns that were brought up. But specifically, senators, when you do get a concern, you don't have to wait for your committee meetings to do that. You can send in your committees an email and say, hey, I just got this this concern. Let's work on this. But I yield.
Audience member.
Yeah,
Walkity Sports.
I'm not the money man here, but if you swipe your card and nothing gets vended, hold the cancel button. You should get charged back the money. Because the Kinsella one is also broken. I yield to Jay.
Yeah, I think that might, I'm not 100% sure that's true, if that's true or not, but I would assume so because all of our vending machines have some kind of light sensor on it. So the vending machines like upstairs, they have that laser sensor to see if anything passes through and nothing passes through, it'll charge you back. And then the water bottle machines, they have a light sensor where like the door opens. If you actually look inside of that door, there's a small cutout, and that's like what that sensor is there for. It's a light sensor or some type of sensor.
Audience member.
Yeah, sorry about the whole, like, I know we're all talking about issues. I know we're kind of, like, they're all important. We're a little bit going in circles. I have, like, I have, like, 3 things I just want to drive home. And I'll leave it at that. I know, too, we've already talked about the lights. This is, like, the last thing I'm going to talk about, I swear. So, actually, can I take this? All right, I'm going to take this. So, me personally with the lights, there's just a couple things. So the first thing is that you guys know the site like Rate My Professor. You can do that with schools too. If you look at SUNY school, yeah, we don't really strike very high for food or a lot of things, but we do strike very high in safety. I would like to say that I could leave my laptop in the student center all day, come back, and it'll still probably be there. But I'm just saying with these lights, if we start, it's getting dark around campus and everything like that, I think that it could easily, go down. And I would like to think that our safety rating is actually what kind of has our school stand out compared to a lot of other ones, at least for now. And I would hate to see that, people start leaving bad reviews where it's just like, yeah, it's dark, I can't walk around, and stuff like that. I feel afraid going around. I think that would definitely poorly reflect on the school and something that you could easily talk about. Second thing, last semester, this was fantastic. During the winter, right outside Donovan, there was no lights on. I was walking back after working in one of the labs. I'd slipped on some ice and sprained both my ankle and my shoulder at the same time. It was great. It was on the same side, so I couldn't use crutches at all or anything like that. So, as someone that has personally probably been affected by the fact that there was no lights, at all, and I slipped, fell, sprained my ankle, had to go get x-rays. It was fun. My foot was like, you ever sprained your ankle and you see like at the bottom of your foot and it's like all the blood that like is on, it's all bruised and everything like that. It looks great. I have a picture of it. I can show it to you if you like. Anyway, but yeah, that's my main thing. We've talked about it. It's a constant issue. It's been happening for years. I would like to at least see some, even if you just like posted something somewhere that's saying, hey, this is happening. I'm going to do like my 3 points and then I'll let you. It's okay. Second thing, I know Emma's point, boxes aren't really that important compared to something like the lights. I completely agree. I completely understand. The only thing I'm asking for is for a work order to be put in. I don't care if it happens 2 years from now. I just want something done, something in writing that says these boxes do not belong here anymore. Third thing, I am playing the squeaky wheel game where I'm asking about capstone funding. I'm still bringing that up. We are 8 weeks in, 7 weeks in, 9? That's more than I thought. Anyway, what was it? Sean's in my class. He can abide by this where I think Jones, our Professor Jones, had just told us that they're still working on funding. There's no funding in sight. It's annoying. I understand the whole idea of oh, you don't have to buy a book for this class and therefore you're expected to pay for stuff up front, but I'm like, that doesn't sound appealing to anyone. If I'm a student coming here and they're like, you have to pay for your own capstones, I'm going to be like, well, that's kind of dumb. Why do I have to do that? And for other things like mechanical engineers, they get sponsors, and while yes, they don't get to choose their research project as much, I would much rather have my entire, capstone at least covered by, a sponsor versus having to pay for it completely out of pocket. Especially with my project, I would like to say that I'm very passionate about my project, but there is no way that I'm going to be able to pay for this all up front, including me and my 2 other group members. So, yeah, that's it. That's the last 3 points. So.
So with the capstone, like we said, the provost is speaking with the professors, and I'm glad to hear that they are still in talks about that. I don't think there's really anything we can do to expedite that because we don't charge a lab fee for a lot of our labs. This is what we discussed. Because we don't charge that, that's where that fund goes because we don't charge that. They obviously don't want to charge the sociologists or the psychologists or the CBH majors for lab fees, but that is something in taking into consideration where those people who need to use the lab will be charged a lab fee to then support the capstones. I yield.
CFP.
that. I understand what you're saying, no lab fees. But I think too, it's just the difference between capstones for different majors. Some are covered, some are not. I would just like to see something that's consistently uniform throughout it, because some people do have to pay, some people don't have to pay, some people are somewhere in between. That's it.
So I understand. So like I said, thankfully that they're in discussions on trying to figure out how to get more funding for those, so then more people can get funded equitably and equally. But I'm not sure if there is a really easy solution for that. But I
Senator Self.
Really bringing it back towards the lights. This is actually a question about something that we did last year for game room with the windows actually up there. If we were to, like, say safety and facilities was to get some amount of money and they were able to send it their way, would it, like how we got them to fix the windows upstairs, would that possibly have any effect? I yield to the president.
You and in the nicest way possible, you might be able to buy one light, and that wouldn't also involve like the installation costs for that. Those, I can imagine those lights are a couple $100, if not upwards to $1,000, and then you have to install them as well. So,
Walkout Media.
This is just a question for CFB. I know outside of the student government offices, you have a thing for pumpkin drop-offs. Could you just go over that? I yield to CFB.
Annual pumpkins. We've hidden pumpkins around campus. They're filled with money, not actual money, but CFB money. If you find one and you're representing a club, you can take it and write your club name on the back and drop it off in a box in front of the CFB/SGU office. If you're not part of a club and you find one, please leave it for hopefully a club to find.
Do we have any further discussion? Senator Self.
no,
This is actually the
that's
quote
what I'm
that
here
got-
for. We're here for your concerns. So it's
I'm
not,
bringing the
you're
quote
not,
back because it got missed last week because of the career fair. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart, by Helen Keller. And there's the quote of the week. There will be another one next week. The Academic Affairs Committee, if you have any concerns with your classes or even technology, because that falls under the Academic Affairs and Tech Committee, that is on Mondays 6 to 7 and up in the SGU conference room. If you aren't available to attend, please email. I will be setting up possibly a Microsoft Teams meeting for anyone to attend virtually, or if at some point possibly a Blackboard link. But other than that, I yield.
Do we have any further discussion? Senator Rosamilia.
I yield to the floor.
Our president.
yeah. So they do stop the walkways and the roadways, and then you'll also start seeing. Are you a residential student? So you'll also start getting emails when the snow gets really bad, asking you to move your car at an X date at X time to X parking lot, so then they can clear X lot, and then you'll move them back once they clear it out. So they do a really good job.
Do we have anything else for open forum? Seeing none, do we have any swear-ins for today? We do. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? Pro Tem Fees, do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Self. Going on to voting. All those in favor of adjournment? All those who oppose? And all those who abstain. With that, we are adjourned at 1:48 p.m.